So you bring a really exciting background to the conversation because you've kind of done it all. Legitimate 100% commission sales, which is where a lot of folks start, and that type of individual is a hardcore seller, someone who understands how to build pipeline and create something from nothing because literally 100% commission rules are built that way.
Right.
They don't pay for anything unless you sell. And so, very interesting perspective because you're not getting a lot of the tool set and resources
Right.
that some of these tech folk get. And then you move into a true SaaS product, a little bit different with the nonprofit shtick there, but you understand the game.
Yep.
Start to get introduced to some of the modern tech, and then you move into one of the more successful sales enablement tools of this movement, right? The
Right.
creators of inbound, and yet still maintain that outbound focus. And I'm excited to get
Yep.
into those details today. But then now you're over at Refine Labs, leading sales
Yep.
for a company that's built on this concept that you're calling, not we call, but dark social.
Yeah.
Dark social.
Yeah.
What is that all about? What does that mean, and why are you so excited about this idea now? Being a hardcore seller, selling ad tech, martech, enablement, I guess. Now it's dark social.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Dark social. What is dark? So you asked a lot of questions there, but dark social is this idea that buying traditionally happened, right? Back in the day, even when I first started selling, which doesn't feel like back in the day, but even 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, buying happened differently, right? Like everything was gated. If you wanted pricing information, you had to go through a sales rep. Like websites were very vague, right? The websites were designed to convert you on the website to get you into a sales conversation. Now, websites are like a lot more educational. There's content. You can do quite a bit of learning and exploration of a tool on your own, right? We have the PLG movement. So, because there's been this massive like decentralization of information, dark social has arisen. And it's just this area that's hidden away from attribution software, from maybe even sellers' direct influence, definitely from the direct influence of companies. Like it's like this rebellious, these little rebellious corners of the internet where buyers can get information with no strings attached. It might be in the comments section of a LinkedIn post, right? It may be in a Slack community, like Pavilion or Rev Genius or any one of these Slack communities, right? It could be on a podcast, right? They're listening to the Cognism podcast and they're learning something, right? Sales team at Cognism doesn't know who's listening to this podcast. It's tucked away, it's hidden away, and that's where so much demand for something, whether it's a service or a product or just a problem in general, right? Creating like what I call this intent to explore, which I believe happens right before there is an intent to buy. All of that intent is created in dark social. But here's the problem. It doesn't, it's like HubSpot can't measure it, right? It can't track it. It can't attribute to it. So what happens is marketers get in a jam because they have to prove ROI. So what do? They continue to double down on everything that they can measure, but those channels are, increasingly less productive when it comes to generating pipeline. So you've got like this rebellious now band of marketers like Refine Labs who says, hey, we're going to double down actually on dark social. We're going to deprioritize this strict like need for attribution and like this performance marketing direct response mindset. And what does it look like to tell a good story, to communicate messages that are optimized for consumption in the channels where people are learning? um, and you know we're driving an enormous amount of pipeline, not only for ourselves but for our customers too, with this shift in mindset. So it's a really long definition there, but that's dark social in a minute long, in a very long elevator ride, like 20 floors maybe.
So I love that idea around the areas that you can't measure. It's difficult to provide attribution, and again, 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe like you, certainly like me, coming from a hardcore direct sales mindset, this
Yeah.
kind of sounds fluffy. Five, six
Yeah.
years ago, 5, 6 years ago, this sounds fluffy. it sounds like an excuse. It almost sounds like branding, right? It almost sounds like an excuse to not have a goal attached to your demand budget, your marketing budget, so you can just kind of go out there and create content all day and have fun.
Yeah.
However, and I'm starting to convert in this movement myself, and I'll share some stories. But when did it click for you that this is something that makes sense? Like, why did you go from HubSpot attribution king, right?
Yeah.
Track
Yeah.
everything MQL creator, right, of
Yeah.
the inbound movement. How do you go from that to this? What clicked for you? Where did the lights come on? I'm really curious because it sounds fluffy for a hardcore seller. Hey,
Yeah.
if it's not ready to buy, they didn't come in and raise their hand. I'm not talking to them, but yet
Right.
pipeline's happening, deals are happening through
Right.
this dark social thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's funny is how it happened for me was dark social myself. So I started following Chris 2 years ago. Back when I started at HubSpot, like this is probably around the time you and I met, 2.5 years ago now. That's when I was introduced and met Chris. And Chris had just started like Refine Labs. It was like, so I was just like consuming his content. That's funny. He educated me on this entire concept on dark social, right? And it started to make sense to me because the first thing I did was start to reevaluate my own buying patterns. And at that time, I wasn't like a decision maker. I didn't buy software, but it made sense what he was saying. I was like, yeah, like if I was going to buy, like, I don't really want to talk to sales like immediately. I want pricing on the website. I want more access to information. We've all scrolled on LinkedIn and seen ads that are like just complete trash, right? Just noise in your feed, right? Like a fundraising round, or we made the Gartner Magic Quadrant, or we're ranked the winter winner for G2, right? And you've seen advertising that is with that kind of like direct response, like just talking about me mindset. So a lot of those things started to click initially for me. And then in my conversations with my prospects, at HubSpot's fantastic. But, Chris says this a lot, like marketers adopt the limitations of software becomes the marketer strategy. And I saw that like at HubSpot, like you bought
Mm.
HubSpot, what do? You are going to be very, very heavy on email marketing, right? Because that's the tool that you've bought, right? So you're going to use it. You need to show value and maximize its usage and adoption. So the limitations of a tool, not in a bad way, but like it can't track dark social. So what are you going to do? You're going to maximize the usage of this $10,000, $20,000 tool that you just bought. So you're probably just going to focus on email marketing and retargeting maybe, and some of these other like and gating content, right? It's a CRM. It's priced on contacts, right? So obviously it's biased towards email capture and this idea of gating content and then nurturing via email. And so as I work with customers, I realize like, yeah, this can work. There's this, but it's missing something that I believe to be very powerful. And that's when the lights kind of started to click for me with this mindset. So
So one of the things that because I'm going through this journey myself now, and I'm a huge believer. When I was at Connect and Sell, from my transition from the sales developers to Connect and Sell during the pandemic, uh, I went in there to sell, and I was going to do some marketing stuff for them, but the pandemic hit, so it was basically a sales role. And by the time I hit my quota, I wanted to look back and say, hey, where did all these deals really come from? And I connect to sell huge dial platform, right? You dial a bunch, you have conversations. I set over 1,500 meetings for myself doing cold outbound. That resulted in only about 15% of my total number. Now I hit my number by October of 2020, and
mhm.
the majority of that came from either LinkedIn or the podcast stuff that I was doing. That's how I could attribute it, and I can't directly attribute it because it's not like I was gating the content and like But I asked people, "Hey, where did you
Yeah,
find me?"
exactly.
Oh,
You can self-reported attribution. Exactly.
and now that's when it started to click for me, right? And when I actually left and started um, I was calling it bucketing buckets as a service before phone ready leads. That's when you and I started talking, and I was trying to figure out how can I get HubSpot to track all this stuff, right? How can I start to do that? And so it started to click for me, but then I was still in that marketer's mindset of like, I need to capture so that I know, and then I could double down versus like truly just doubling down on it.
Yep.
Um, and I'm still trying to struggle with this a little bit, but the self-reported one is one thing, but how do you convince leadership that this is really a good strategy? Because I'm a huge believer now. It's like I got a little bit frustrated. I actually did my live sessions. I was doing it every day and I stopped doing it because it's like I don't see anything. I don't see the data. It's not worth it. HubSpot's not
Yeah.
reporting it. But
Yeah.
then the other piece is like, well, where's the right point to ask? Because of course you have to get people to subscribe to get them like to get to the content somehow. You may want to do that. There's this fine balance versus like the old school of just like, hey, subscribe and go. And every single partner that I run with these days is like, hey, you got a landing page? I'm like, I don't really care. I just do it live, you know? That's how I
Yep.
feel. But there's
Yep.
still this constraint around like how do you turn that into real like how do I bring this to the board, right? Like how do I
Yeah.
show value?
Yeah.
What is outside of self-reporting, is there anything that you guys are talking about or doing? Because I think that's the big gap for leadership.
Yep. Yeah. So once your mindset shifts, and that you're like, this is serious, and I want to double down on this, and I see it, but how do I get the rest of the org to see it? Like, there's a mindset shift that happens where in your own brain first, that has to happen first, and that's like largely my sales process here at Refine Labs is like. That's like the first qualification box, right? Is like, is there a mindset? Are we aligned philosophically here that this is because this is a very different direction and it's going to take a lot of change
It sounds
management and
fluffy. It just sounds fluffy, man. It sounds fluffy.
fluffy. So it goes. So we go to second stage, right? So mindset is there. Then you do need a new and the right measurement framework. It's not impossible to do these things. Self-reported attribution is a part of it, right? We capture that piece, but it's also showing what is in HubSpot. Like, really, did like 80% of our deals like is it organic? Like you look in HubSpot, it's what it shows, like direct traffic, organic. What is really the story there, though? There's
Yeah.
a story behind every single one of those leads. So when you tell that to executives and you say, look at this histogram and look at this, most of our traffic and most of our opportunities are coming through, or HubSpot's reporting
Google organic.
organic or direct traffic. Where did they come from? Where is all this? Like, there's not a lot coming from email marketing. It's still coming from like this very fluffy report. And that's when like a logical person says, I'm curious about this. I want to dig into that. And so we have our whole like measurement framework. Like whenever we bring a customer on, we install like our dashboard right into Salesforce or HubSpot. But again, it's not direct response. So what do we look at? We look at the high intent inbound website funnel. What we do is when we create demand on LinkedIn, through our advertising, paid social, LinkedIn, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook, Quora, right? All these other like channels that we're experimenting on. What we notice is a very clear trend, and dude, it's a data story, right? The clear trend is that this really fast, like high volume, like inbound pipeline where somebody hits the website, wants to talk to sales, that increases dramatically because people are just, there's more hand raisers. Marketers miss this because they blend their funnels all into one big fluffy funnel where they've got like this low intent funnel that creates like a million MQLs and like 5 close one deals. And then they've got this like very lean high intent funnel, but where it's like requested a demo and these close at a 30% clip or a 20% clip, right? But what happens is this gets lost in the noise because marketers report on these in a way that's blended. And so one of the things we do when we come in is we call it splitting the funnel. We come in and we split the funnel and we say, hey, look at this. Look at where all the revenue is coming from. You split your own funnel. It sounds like a connect and sell. You said,
I did.
where is this revenue actually coming from? I'm doing 90% of my activities are driving 15%. So we help companies to come to this conclusion on their own alongside them. And it's actually a very compelling story to tell to executive teams, right? It's a story that I tell like every day now. And it clicks, because the data is there. You just, the way you have it set up right now is optimized for the old way of marketing, right? So
Yep.
when you install kind of a new way to measure aligned with this new mindset, the numbers are actually pretty clear, honestly.